This is actually a great example of us starting to see the benefits of this council existing.
Yes.
I think we're all certainly quite happy about.
Indeed.
Now, this is then the topic of external DPS buffs. A lot of people just seem to want to remove externals and stuff to just make it all a bit cleaner and simpler. But they, do disagree. And that's actually fair enough, because when they disagree or when they have, their overall thoughts on the situation, it's great to hear them and actually see it be fully explained. So, saying this is a good topic, but it's a hard one. A lot of questions about varying player tastes. One goal you have might be maximizing your chances of killing a boss. Another goal you have might be maximizing your position on a ranking website. So basically, are you, doing maximum team player, or have you watched, one of the joke Asmongold, well, not really a joke, the Asmongold parsing videos back in
400 years ago, yes.
Million years ago, right? Where, it's like, stand in the fire, you need to do deeps. Those goals sometimes lead you toward different behavior. It's not really up to us to tell people which one to pursue, but we do design towards keeping the first one interesting and rewarding. Because obviously, as a developer here, you'd rather think about overall team success, right? That's where World of Warcraft is strongest. Though the thing that within that framework you then can hyper optimize on is getting your ranking bar big. Because then PP big and make people happy. So basically, this is the debate, right? So choices where players are explicitly thinking about maximizing the group's output contribute to that. These can sometimes make the second goal less clear. For an example, because buffs make it hard to account for everyone's damage contribution, and so far they're okay with that situation. Another way of looking at it is this: the killing the boss goal is made by us. The ranking goal is a goal made and managed by players. Players can and should do whatever they want. Adaptations like asterisking logs, which include power infusion, are already occurring. The rankings are an expression of what players choose to value to use as a mark of individual achievement. We all know someone's value to a group is not solely determined by their DPS meter, even though it's a useful tool. Guild recruiters and evaluating players know that various kinds of contributions aren't reflected there. Contributions like power infusion aren't obvious on them either, but similarly, this is an analysis problem left to players. One of the most difficult aspects of the topic, though, is the social tension, because sometimes people argue about the buffs, right? Are you you're going to be selfish? Or, even just, I guess the thing that's the correct, not correct, but the design they'd prefer, which is people talk about how to best use the resources they have.
Yeah.
So saying that this is a understandable thing. To me, why one possible response somebody may have for this is that this could put you at odds with your own group mates, so stamp it out. Why have a source of conflict? But then, for this developer, the flip side is that this is part and parcel playing with real people in a cooperative game. Yeah, a lot of the satisfaction for loads of people is going to be working all this shit out together. And preserving the human element of group play in WoW, not boiling it down to predictable mechanical interactions, is an important value. So what do you think with that?
So, the one thing I think more than anything else is...
I'll pop off in a sec.
Yeah, just get Warcraft logs to do the very difficult job, I'll admit, because there's so many different versions of it. It's not just PI these days. But put it on the priest. Priest gets the damage. That's how it works in FF for Dancer. And everyone's happy enough. And Dragoon. Everyone's like, sweet. So the priest gets a contribution because the priest is contributing. They have the incentive to put it on the highest damage dealer. It's no longer as much of an argument, because what benefits
it merges the two, doesn't it?
Yeah, what benefits the group benefits the priest the most, and then problems are solved.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. We've basically, that solves the problem while keeping the intended gameplay and the personal big dick. Oh, yeah, okay. So the problem is actually literally solved.
The problem is almost entirely solved to a degree. There's certainly different elements, because you've got, DPS, you'd have to get, because people don't look at logs, but always look at DPS meters as well. You would need that to be propagated across other things.
You could also be a bit degen if you were really trying to push logs. The degenerate gameplay there could be coordinating with your intended, DPS to maximize the thing. Yeah. But that's not a big problem.
Yeah, there are definitely problems there. It's just it's going to actually still exist as some sort of problem, but it's not really a problem if I don't know. It's just a community problem where if it worked that way, it'd be substantially. There would be the priest going, "Fuck you. This is my resource to distribute," as opposed to this is the group's resource to distribute. If you get me. And then that'd be that, where all things align for the best damage dealer gets it. End of story. The damage dealers don't have a horse in the race unless they literally just like looking at the damage meter going wee, or if it's something that isn't just pure damage. If it's haste, because that gets more complicated to contribute. You'd have to do some really intense calculations as opposed to like Dance Partner, which is just here's some extra damage.
Yeah.
So that's basically kind of it in a
Problem
way.
solved. I actually think that would be a great solution. Maybe that's in scope for the next expansion. But continuing then, he says, see, for example...
Well, that's the fun thing. It's not a Blizzard fix. It's Warcraft logs. That's the difference.
Oh, I was thinking Blizzard could maybe supported that in the game itself.
Blizzard could... Well,
if they wanted to, the way that
they could update logs to do the calculations for what extra damage comes from that extra haste, as opposed to leaving that for the team at Warcraft Logs, who do a fucking fantastic job, by the way. Because it's like, well, it's their fault. It's like, no, it's not their fault. It's
like saying the data mining is Wowhead's fault.
Yeah, it's the way the cookie crumbles. I think they could fix it in that way and make sure it's like on their end really obvious to who, or they could frame it in a way where it's like, well, I guess the problem is if it's going to give stats, then that gets more complicated because someone might want extra haste as an example. Go, yeah. Of course, haste fucking owns. Makes your gameplay feel faster. It lets your class sometimes generally play a bit better. Or extra crit in case of extra procs, things like that. That's where it gets a bit more complicated. But if it was just percentage damage, or if the calculation was easy in the World of Warcraft end, they could just literally shift the damage to be, instead of, for every 10 points, something like every 10 points of damage you do, or I guess in the wording of the buff, it would be give buff to target player for every 10 points of damage the target player does during this duration. You somehow, some manifestation, do 1 damage to the target. And then that would solve the problem in that way.
Yeah.
And then that would keep all the benefits, but also get rid of some of the things. There's likely downsides to that I'm not really thinking about. But in terms of solving the problems laid out, I think that's more or less it, really.
Yeah.
Problem close enough to solved.
Problem solved.
Yeah. Although that is actually a good highlight from William saying, "For the love of God, we don't need more calculations during raids. Nothing worse than bad raid performance," which is also fair.
True.
Yeah. So I guess
Well, give us a few last random procs firing off like the. Just fire off for no reason you don't care about.
Massive, complicated amounts of things. Amounts of calculations for no reason. But
they continue though, saying that like for an example, the common lament that Group Finder content has lost a lot of the human interaction from the experience. Mechanics that involve interacting with group mates bring out both the good and the bad of that, and that might be better than having neither. Right, so could the good be worth the bad? Yeah. Trying to be as transparent as possible. So far, we have not constrained our designs to require meter/ranking clarity and fairness, where doing so would compromise other values. On a gut level, a simple, compelling, familiar RPG concept is a thing your class can do is give one person a buff. It's a minority of abilities in WoW, but it would feel like a huge step to say that is no longer valid concepting for WoW abilities at all. That enabling high fidelity ranking is so important that a certain ability design space is closed off.
I agree.
Yep, and maybe just making it damage back.
Yeah. The one thing the one thing I find interesting about this is how it feels like synthesis, because they clearly removed synthesis because it wasn't working. That druid ability, but I guess there's problems. That was so cool, but they just got rid of it. I guess the other problem with how they concept it with group content is a lot of the social elements there are when you get into, especially group vendor, you lose the human interaction. So the problem is you need a way to tell if someone's going to be the best damage in that group.
Yeah.
If you're going to give them that. But you can't ask because everyone will say it's me. Or you'll get conflict that way, which means the game needs a better way of showing you, as opposed to, I'm going to look up logs, which won't work in like early for experience. You're pugging, it's just out, you can't find logs for someone. So it's very, very difficult to know who to give it to. But that's where the FF version's a lot simpler because, generally speaking, assuming the players are perfect, it's a fairly clear line of, oh, these jobs literally do more damage, but they lack certain forms of utility as a result. Like, if you dance partner with a machinist or a bard, you really need to rethink your choices. But if there's a samurai or reaper, you're like, yep, here you go. Here you go. You can press the buttons fast and have fun. Unless they're a freestyle samurai, in which case, don't give it to them. Don't give it to them.